Yeah, you wish you get up here, dude. I'm literally riding an ogre. If that's not becoming legend, I don't know what is.
Hello and welcome to another Destiny 2 video. In our last video, we looked specifically at different shotgun damage numbers to see if slug shotguns will become viable as DPS options after their buff in the upcoming season. Today we're going to be doing a big roundup of all of the DPS champs in the game right now and see which ones are actually the best, some useful combos, and most importantly, when these are actually the best option, and it will all be summarized at the end. First, taking a look at what is widely considered to be the best option, which is the Xenophage. We hit for 13,893 per shot, giving us a 1 mag damage output of 180,609 and a DPS of 29,130. And we'll use that to set the bar of comparison moving forward. Next, looking at 120 RPM grenade launcher with spike grenades, which in this case I'm using the Interference IV. Our one-shot damage is 18,647. I'm using Clown cartridge, which can get between 6 and 8 in the magazine. So I'm using an example clip of 7 to get an average, which gives us a 1 mag damage of 130,809 and a DPS of 40,249. Now, taking a look with full court, we hit for 21,672, bringing our 1 mag damage to 151,704, and the DPS up to 46,678. Next, we're going to bring into the mix a top tier special weapon, the Seraph shotgun as tested in the last video, but with a few updates to improve it. We still have Vorpal on, but this time we are also running Assault Mag to increase our fire rate. We hit for 16,866 per shot and get a 1 mag total damage of 101,196 and a DPS of 27,350, which is extremely good for a special weapon that is non-exotic. Now, looking at Anarchy, which is a bit more nuanced, we hit for 449 on the impact of the shot twice. Our first hit shocks for 3,126, but once our second attaches, we are brought up to our max damage, and each shock does 6,252 for the rest of the duration. We did 110,308 over the testing period and get a DPS of 11,925. Obviously that is quite low in comparison to other options, but the real strength of Anarchy is that you can use other weapons while it is damaging your target. In this example, I pair with the Seraph shotgun from before, and over this 5-second damage period, we do 162,014 damage and have a DPS of 39,275. Next up, taking a look at Wendigo, which hits for 15,018 per shot and gives us a 1 mag damage of 90,108 and a DPS of 33,373. However, with the explosive light buff, we now hit for 25,589 per shot, and this brings our 1 mag damage up to 153,534 and our DPS up to 56,864. Now we'll look at Fourth Horseman with the Catalyst, which hits for 12,398 but ramps up damage with each shot to hit 18,845 on the last. This gives the entire magazine a damage output of 78,355 and a DPS of 87,061, as it takes less than a second to get off the full mag. This leads me to a great suggestion for what I have found to be probably the most effective burst damage combo in the game, which is to fire 6 charged Wendigo shots, then swap to Fourth Horseman and empty the mag. This does a whopping 231,889 damage and has a DPS of 50,410, including the weapon swap, which is very high. You can then swap back to Wendigo, and hopefully by then you'll have a full mag again because of the auto-loading holster perk. Obviously the DPS will start to fall off with time, but considering most damage windows for bosses are short and the unbuffed Wendigo DPS is still strong, this is an extremely viable option. Next up is the Whisper of the Worm with the Catalyst, which hits for 23,603 with Whispered Breathing and has a DPS of 28,324. The huge benefit, of course, being that the DPS of this weapon doesn't go down once you start shooting because you never have to reload. As long as the boss and you can stand completely still and the crit is easy to hit, this is still a very top tier choice. But the second you have to re-proc the perk and aim down sights for a few seconds, the usability really goes away. And the last weapon we will look at today is swords. I'm using the Night Terror with Jaded Edge in the first slot for extra impact, as well as the Impact Fully Masterwork, and also On Guard perk, which increases damage by 30% for a short duration when you swap to the weapon. The regular light attack hits for 12,912 and has a DPS of 27,025. Now we will test with On Guard, which only lasts for the first 2 swings unfortunately, and over the 9 swing test I used, it increases DPS to 28,827. But we also have a heavy attack with the sword, so let's see if that's worth using to increase our damage. Our regular heavy attack hits for 44,116, and just as a side note, it does 3.5 times the damage, but takes 4 times the ammo. So if you're super low on a mag, you might want to consider that to conserve ammo and do the most damage possible. To test the new DPS with the heavy attack thrown in, I start with a heavy attack, then use light attacks until the heavy attack is charged again to simulate what a full cycle would be if you continue doing this combo. The DPS goes up slightly to 29,362. Now testing our heavy attack with On Guard, which is much more efficient, we hit for 57,349, and using the same combo as before, this brings our DPS up to 31,620. So while they may not be the absolute best option for burst DPS, swords are still extremely strong for damage output, and on top of this, their ease of use is nearly unmatched. Their DPS will never drop off due to no reloading or resetting a perk, and they also have a very large ammo reserve that can output around 600,000 damage, whereas by comparison, Xenophage is around 400,000 using full reserves. Okay, so what does this all mean? What should you use? And more importantly, when should you use it? I've created a flowchart here that should work to help you determine the best option when at a boss encounter, because just seeing the highest number doesn't really do that much to help you across the board. The first question we have to ask is the boss static? This is because that a boss moving around can drastically decrease the effectiveness of some weapons while others are completely untouched. If they are static, we can then ask whether or not they are close. This is because the best DPS option available to us for burst damage is a combination of 4th Horseman and Wendigo, which ideally can be substituted in for another good grenade launcher after the Wendigo gets sunset. However, another comparable option that is better for ammo economy is to combine Anarchy with the Vorpal weapon Assault Mag Shotgun. And again, because exotics are unaffected by sunsetting, the shotgun can be swapped in and out as needed for other shotguns with similar perks, and you can keep the Anarchy in your loadout. Our last top tier option would be to use a sword, which again could be combined with the 4th Horseman to start out with a bit of extra burst damage. If the boss is far away, however, then obviously we can't use a shotgun for damage or a sword, and those 3 options are no longer valid. But we can now take full advantage of the full court perk on an already very strong damage option of the grenade launcher with spike grenades. Again, it is important to note that the boss has to be both large and static because the grenade launcher shots have a heavy arc to them and a long travel time. Now down our other path of a moving boss, which Destiny seems to be leaving on much more heavily in recent raids, and I think that's why the Xenophage is now a favorite. If the boss is close, I would say the same option is best as though it was static and a close target because of how easy it is to hit shotgun shots. However, whereas 4th Horseman had the upper hand before, I will maybe now give the upper hand to Anarchy and a regular shotgun just for the ease of use, because pacing shots won't drop your DPS, whereas 4th Horseman might be a little harder to land every pellet. Swords again make for a very easy pick because the light attack swing will help you stick to the target. And finally comes what you probably went into this thinking would be the best option for everything, which is the Xenophage. It is important to note that the Xenophage is still extremely strong, but not because of its DPS, but rather its ease of use. Using a hit scan weapon with no crit multiplier and no damage fall off ensures that you will hardly ever experience a drop in damage from your ideal output. Its magazine damage is very high and takes a long time to fire, meaning you likely won't be hindered by the long reload time. But even if you get to that point, there are ways to avoid it, such as Marksman Dodge on the Hunter, Actium War Rig on the Titan. I think the reason why people think this is the best weapon is because the most recent raid is always the most common run, and on the bosses in Garden of Salvation, it's extremely easy to miss shots using nearly every other damage option. It is quite possible to outperform the damage of Xenophage with lucky usage of a full court grenade launcher, but the final boss tends to step around, then he flies upward, so if you miss 1 to 2 shots, all of a sudden Xenophage takes the lead. I would say whenever there is a possibility of you to miss even a single shot, all of a sudden Xenophage jumps to the top, and I would highly still recommend that. And that finally is all for the video. I hope you found it interesting and a bit more useful than your average damage testing video. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.